This is the number one reason that people get divorced, and we don't pay attention to it. I mean, like, it's crazy that we don't have these conversations before we get married. Hey, beautiful brides, welcome back to my channel. For those of you who are new here, congrats on your engagement. I'm Kyle James. I used to be a full-service wedding planner, and now I create YouTube videos to help brides like you plan the weddings of their dreams. I put out new wedding planning and bride lifestyle videos every single Wednesday, so be sure that you hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss any of my upcoming videos. I love helping girls like you create their dream weddings, but it's also so important to create your dream relationship, your dream marriage, and your dream life along the way. The statistics for successful marriage are insanely low, like it's scary, but it's just because we are not intentional about it at all. We get so lost in like the wedding planning process and then in our careers and our kids and all this stuff that we forget to actually put effort into creating our dream marriages. The only way a marriage can really be successful is if you're extremely intentional about creating a successful marriage. They are created intentionally, and now is the time to do it. I know that you feel busy. I know you have so much going on with planning your wedding, and I'm sure your career and all these other things, but there is nothing more important than this, I promise you. And it can totally be done alongside planning your dream wedding. It just takes a little bit of extra effort. It doesn't actually even take that much extra time. It just takes a little bit of extra effort and extra energy, and it will totally be worth it. If you're up for creating an extraordinary marriage alongside your dream wedding, hit that thumbs up button and let's dive in. So in this video, I have a few conversations that you need to have with your fiance before you get married. It will help your relationship so much. It's not like these are like a one-time thing, but it's something that you want to really start discussing and start making decisions on before the wedding day. And then you can always bring them up again and always make changes. But if you create a foundation and actually open the floor to be able to talk about this kind of stuff, your relationship is going to be so much better. So I recommend being very intentional about these conversations, like scheduling a specific time to sit down and have them where you're not distracted, maybe like a coffee date or something like that, where you can like really put down everything else and just be with each other and have these conversations. If you try to have them like in the car or while you're doing other things, there's a good chance that they'll just like turn into an argument, especially if you're like stressed and have other things on your mind. Don't do that. These are like really important. So be sure that you schedule time with your lover and sit down and talk about them. All right, so once you feel all lovey and you're all snuggled up with your fiance, here's what you're gonna talk about. Number one, finances. This is the number one reason that people get divorced, and we don't pay attention to it. I mean, like, it's crazy that we don't have these conversations before we get married. It's always something that like we ignore, and it builds up and all this tension builds up, and then you know what happens. I'm not gonna keep saying that word. But it's something that can totally be avoided, and it's something that you can work on together, and it can actually make your relationship so much stronger. So a few things you wanna talk about when you're talking about your finances are, number one, what do you want your finances to look like? Will one of you manage them? Or will both of you manage them as a team? What does that look like? I personally think it's easier to decide who's gonna kind of take the lead on managing the finances. It doesn't mean that they are like in complete control of all the money and all the financial decisions, but it's just easier to have somebody who is going to actually keep following up with them and keep track of them, and so that somebody has specific responsibility for that. For us, that is my husband, because although I'm great at spending money, I'm not actually that good at sitting down and really like tracking everything and being super responsible about it. The next thing to talk about with your fiance is, do you both plan to keep working, especially once you have kids? I think this is something that does not get discussed before marriage, and then it's like a surprise and an argument and tension later. I think it's really important to sit down, and if you don't want to work, then tell your fiance, or if your fiance doesn't want to work, make sure they tell you, and that you're open to having these conversations and you're open to figuring out how you can make this work. But this is not something that you want to bring up after the fact. And then the final thing is discuss how you're going to split your income and expenses. It seems like the normal thing to do or something would be to just like get a joint bank account and all of your money goes in there and all of your expenses come out of there, and that's how it works. But there are so many different ways to do this, especially if one of you is working and one of you is not, or one of you is making way more money. You really just need to discuss how you're going to handle your money. I'm going to do a video on how my husband and I combined our finances and how we split everything. I think we have an amazing system that works really well. I'll do another video on that, so be sure that you're subscribed so you don't miss that when I do put that out. And I'm going to have him in it as well so that you can kind of get the guy's opinion as well. But yeah, this is something that you really want to talk about, because obviously people aren't going to be making the exact same amount of money at the exact same time. So if you expect that you split everything evenly, then you need to have that conversation. Or if you expect the person who makes more money to contribute more, then you need to have that conversation as well. Like I said, there's no right or wrong way to do any of this stuff. It's just important that you talk about it and that you agree upon how you want to do it. Also remember that none of this is set in stone. Everything, like, things change so much as life goes on, and so you might have to come back and revise and talk about this, and maybe even talk about it once a year. But it's good to know kind of like what you're doing, especially for like maybe the next year or 2 years or something like that. Kind of have a plan and manage your expectations for what money's gonna look like, so that there aren't any surprises after you get married. If you're just super proactive about how you're gonna manage your financial situation, then you're not gonna have the arguments and the issues and the stuff build up that does cause marriages to fail. The next thing that hopefully you've discussed, but I just wanna make sure that you have, because it's obviously super important, and that is kids. Number one, do you want to have them or not? You need to have this conversation with your partner. Don't just assume that obviously they want to have kids, or obviously they don't want to have kids because you don't want to have kids. Definitely don't just like assume that you can convince somebody to have kids or something like that. This isn't stuff that you have to have completely figured out right away. But like I said, it's just so important to start having these conversations and start figuring out what you want to do. Really listen to your partner's stance on each of these issues and take into consideration each other's feelings and really just make sure that you're considering the other person's view and you're not just trying to like get your way. I think the work that they talk about that marriage takes is like really laying stuff out there and then working together to figure out how you're going to take that on. It's also good to talk about like how many kids you want or how you want to raise your kids. Also, like, do you want somebody to stay home with them? Will you stay home with them, or will your husband stay home with them? The other thing you want to talk about with kids is when you want to have them. Is this something you're going to do right after you get married, or is this something that you're going to hold off on and you want to work on your career or something? I think too many couples get married and then one person expects that they start trying for kids right away and the other person is like, no, I want to work on my career. So it's just important to know where your partner stands and figure out what you guys want to do and at least start having these conversations so that it's not a surprise after you get married. Stuff like that, just start laying it out and start creating a vision for how you really want it to go. It's important that you know what the other person wants. And that you're intentionally working on creating something together. I know sometimes it's hard to agree on things, and sometimes these conversations are going to take time, and things are totally going to change because life happens and things change. Like, I used to want a lot of kids, and now I'm like 2, and that is it. I'm done after this one. But yeah, things change, but it's like we know that we have a relationship where we can bring these concerns to the table and we can really discuss and work through them and decide what's best for us as a couple and us as a family. And then the third conversation that you want to have that's definitely an ongoing conversation is life goals. So are there specific things in your life that you really want to achieve? Are there specific things in your partner's life that they really want to achieve? And how is this going to affect you as a couple and affect you as a family? A lot of things that we want to achieve in our lives are going to take our partner's love and support, especially if we have a family and stuff like that. So it's really important to know what your partner wants, know what they're after, and know how you can support them. It's important that they do the same for you as well. And you aren't going to really know this stuff unless you're really asking each other these questions and creating a safe space for you to share what you really want. What's your vision for your life? Along with this conversation, you also want to decide who you are as a couple, who you show up as in the world, how you're going to contribute, like what you want your life to look like, basically. Laying this out together and being intentional and deciding how you want things to look will make life so much easier and so much more juicy. I think we focus on planning a wedding and getting married, and then you just kind of go in the flow of life and you're kind of just doing your own things and it's just not intentional. And I think that's how people grow apart. The real key to having a successful marriage is having something that you're creating together and working towards together. Even if that is you just supporting your partner in doing something or your partner supporting you in doing something. Other things you want to talk about are specific goals that you have, maybe income goals, career goals, health goals are super important to discuss here. Maybe travel goals. If you want to know if your partner wants to travel the world or is completely against traveling the world and you want, just have these conversations. If you're being super intentional and you're what is the point of our life? What is the point of our relationship? And what do we want to create in our lives? Your wedding day is going to be so exciting because it's a launch pad into that. And your life is going to be so much more exciting and juicy, and you'll create so much more when you're being intentional about it and talking about these things. My husband and I have an entire goal setting process that we do, and we have a vision for our relationship and a vision for our life. And then we also set goals and weekly goals and yearly goals and monthly goals, and we have this whole process for this. I'll probably do a video on that as well because I don't really have time to go into it here, and I'm out of breath because I'm super pregnant. But so be sure that you're subscribed so that when I do put that up, you don't miss it. But yeah, just having these goals that we're going after together and this vision for what we want to create for us and for our love and for our family and what we want to do is so exciting, and it just makes life so much better. So I think that's probably enough for you to talk about right now, especially if you haven't had these conversations. You might want to have them separately. It's not something you want to sit down and just try to get through as fast as you can. Maybe schedule 3 different times. My husband and I have a weekly marriage meeting that we do where we discuss things like this. It's really important that you are intentional about having conversations like this. And like I said, creating a safe space for you both to be able to share and for you to be able to create together so that your marriage will be successful. So if you are going to sit down and have these conversations with your fiance, give this video a thumbs up. Be sure you hit that little share button and send this link over to your other engaged friends. And let's all create extraordinary marriages and relationships and lives together. Be sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss any of my upcoming wedding planning and bride lifestyle videos. And we'll see you next time. Happy planning!